From the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. From delusion lead me to truth, from darkness lead me to light, from death lead me to immortality. This universe is a trinity, and this is made of name, form and action. The source of all names is the Word, for it is by the Word that all names are spoken. The Word is behind all names, even as Brahman is behind the Word. The source of all forms is the eye, for it is by the eye that all forms are seen. The eye is behind all forms, even as Brahman is behind the eye. The source of all actions is the body, for it is by the body that all actions are done. The body is behind all actions, even as Brahman is behind the body. Those three are one: Atman, the spirit of life, and Atman, although one, is those three. The immortal is veiled by the real. The spirit of life is the immortal. Name and form are the real, and by them the spirit is veiled. Once Gargya, a Brahmin, proud of his learning, went to Ajatasattu, the king of Benares, and said, "I am willing to teach you about Brahman. I will give you 1,000 gifts, if you can," said the king, "and then the people will run and say, 'Our king's bounty is as great as that of King Janaka.'" So Gargya began and said, "There is a spirit in the sun high above, and that spirit I adore as Brahman." "How can you say that?" replied Ajatasattu. "I only consider the sun as the ruler of radiance, the source of all beings on earth." Then Gargya said, "There is a spirit in the moon far away, and that spirit I adore as Brahman." Ajatasattu answered, "I only consider the moon as the ruler of the sacred Soma wine dressed in whiteness." "There is a spirit in lightning," then said Gargya, "and that spirit I adore as Brahman." "I only consider lightning," said Ajatasattu, "as a thing of brightness." Gargya said, "There is a spirit in the ethereal spaces, and that spirit I adore as Brahman." "How can you say that?" replied Ajatasattu. "I only consider the ethereal space as a non-evolving fullness." Gargya said, "There is a spirit in the wind, and that spirit I adore as Brahman." Ajatasattu said, "I only consider the winds as the unconquerable army of powerful India." Gargya said, "There is a spirit in fire, and that spirit I adore as Brahman." "I only consider fire," said Ajatasattu, "as a great power." Gargya said, "There is a spirit in water, and that spirit I adore as Brahman." Ajatasattu answered, "I only consider water as a beautiful reflection." Gargya said, "There is a spirit in a mirror, and that spirit I adore as Brahman." "I only consider a mirror," said Ajatasattu, "as something brilliant." Gargya said, "There is a spirit in the sound of the steps of man, and that spirit I adore as Brahman." "How can you say that?" said Ajatasattu. "I only consider that sound as a sign of life." Gargya said, "There is a spirit in the quarters of heaven, and that spirit I adore as Brahman." "I only consider the quarters of heaven," said Ajatasattu, "as friends who are ever with us." "There is a spirit which is a shadow," said Gargya, "and that spirit I adore as Brahman." "How can you say that?" said Ajatasattu. "I only consider this shadow as death." Gargya said, "There is a spirit in the human body, and that spirit I adore as Brahman." "I only consider a body," said Ajatasattu, "as the covering of a soul." "Is this all?" asked Ajatasattu. Gargya replied, "This is all." "If this is all, we know nothing," said Ajatasattu. On hearing this, Gargya said, "Allow me to be your pupil. It is indeed contrary to custom, said Ajatasattu, that a Brahmin should go to a Kshatriya for instruction. But come, I will in truth teach you about Brahman. And he arose and took him by the hand, and the two, walking together, came up to a man who was in deep sleep. They called him by different names, such as, "You great man dressed in whiteness, you Soma the king." But he did not rise. Then Ajatasattu shook him with his hand, and he awoke. When this man was asleep, said Ajatasattu, where had his consciousness gone, and when he awoke, wherefrom did it return? But Gargya did not know. Then spoke Ajatasattu, when a man is asleep, his soul takes the consciousness of the several senses and goes to rest with them on the Supreme Spirit, who is in the human heart. When all the senses are quiet, the man is said to be asleep. Then the soul holds the powers of life, breath, voice, eye, ear, and mind, and they rest in quietness. When the soul is in the land of dreams, then all the worlds belong to the soul. A man can be a great king or a great Brahmin, and live in conditions high or low. And even as a great king of this earth takes his attendants with him and goes about his dominions wherever he desires, so the soul of man takes the powers of life with him and wanders in the land of dreams according to his desires. When a man is in deep sleep and all consciousness is gone through the 72,000 little channels which lead to the centre of the heart from its circumference, then the soul rests in the covering around the heart. And as a prince or a king or a great Brahmin might find the peace of a fullness of joy, so the soul of man has now found peace. Even as airy threads come from a spider, or small sparks come from a fire, so from Atman, the spirit in man, come all the powers of life, all the worlds, all the gods, all beings. To know the Atman is to know the mystery of the Upanishads, the truth of truth. The powers of life are truth, and their truth is Atman, the spirit. Maitreyi said one day Yajnavalkya to his wife, I am going to leave this present life and retire to a life of meditation. Let me settle my possessions upon you and Katyayani. If all the earth filled with riches belonged to me, O my lord, said Maitreyi, should I thereby attain life eternal? Certainly not, said Yajnavalkya. Your life would only be as is the life of wealthy people. In wealth there is no hope of life eternal. Maitreyi said, what should I then do with possessions that cannot give me life eternal? Give me instead your knowledge, O my lord. On hearing this, Yajnavalkya exclaimed, Dear you are to me, beloved, and dear are the words you say. Come, sit down, and I will teach. But hear my words with deep attention. Then spoke Yajnavalkya. In truth, it is not for the love of a husband that a husband is dear, but for the love of the soul in the husband that a husband is dear. It is not for the love of a wife that a wife is dear, but for the love of the soul in the wife that the wife is dear. It is not for the love of children that children are dear, but for the love of the soul in children that children are dear. It is not for the love of riches that riches are dear, but for the love of the soul in riches that riches are dear. It is not for the love of religion that religion is dear, but for the love of the soul in religion that religion is dear. It is not for the love of power that power is dear, but for the love of the soul in power that power is dear. It is not for the love of the heavens that the heavens are dear, but for the love of the soul in the heavens that the heavens are dear. It is not for the love of the gods that the gods are dear, but for the love of the soul in the gods that the gods are dear. It is not for the love of creatures that creatures are dear, but for the love of the soul in creatures that creatures are dear. It is not for the love of the all that the all is dear, but for the love of the soul in the all that the all is dear. It is the soul, the spirit, the self, that must be seen and be heard and have our thoughts and meditation. O Maitri, when the soul is seen, is thought upon and is known, then all that is becomes known. Religion will abandon the man who thinks that religion is apart from the soul. Power will abandon the man who thinks that power is apart from the soul. The gods will abandon the man who thinks that the gods are apart from the soul. Creatures will abandon the man who thinks that creatures are apart from the soul. And all will abandon the man who thinks that the all is apart from the soul, because religion, power, heavens, beings, gods, and all rest on the soul. As when a drum is being beaten, its sound cannot be holden, but by seizing the drum or the beater of the drum, the sounds are holden. As when a conch is being blown, its sound cannot be holden, but by seizing the conch or the blower of the conch, the sounds are holden. As when a lute is being played, its sounds cannot be holden, but by seizing the lute or the player of the lute, the sounds are holden. So it is with the spirit, the soul. As when a lump of salt is thrown into water, and therein being dissolved it cannot be grasped again, but wherever the water is taken it is found salt in the same way, O Maitri, the Supreme Spirit is an ocean of pure consciousness, boundless and infinite. Arising out of the elements, into them it returns again. There is no consciousness after death. Thus spoke Yajnavalkya. Thereupon Maitri said, I am amazed, O my lord, to hear that after death there is no consciousness. To this Yajnavalkya replied, I am not speaking words of amazement, but sufficient for wisdom is what I say. For where there seems to be a duality, there one sees another, one hears another, one feels another's perfume, one thinks of another, one knows another. But when all has become spirit, one's own self, how and whom could one see? How and whom could one hear? How and of whom could one feel the perfume? How and to whom could one speak? How and whom could one know? How can one know him who knows all? How can the knower be known?